Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. The nobility and aristocracy in Arch-Emperor City were deeply shaken. Despite the fact that the Grand Heaven Master and 5 heavenly dukes had unleashed incredible pressure, there were still other heavenly marquises and dukes who flew out of their clans and headed to the imperial palace to offer formal greetings to the Grand Heaven Master. As far as everyone was concerned, this proclamation of universal grace was incredibly malevolent. Furthermore, everyone believed that it mustn't be allowed to stay in effect for very long. If it did, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, even as the heavenly marquises and dukes joined forces to head to the imperial palace, Bai Xiaochun was leading his army of fierce corpse troopers toward the Zhao clan. He was in a state of madness, moving at top speed, and thus, it didn't take long for his 5,000 corpse troopers to descend on the clan, surrounded by a black vortex that was their murderous aura. Although the Zhao clan seemed peaceful and quiet, the bastard children and non-successors of the bloodline couldn't have been more excited. After the Grand Heaven Master's dharmic decree came down, the ambitions they had forced to keep hidden for their entire lives suddenly blossomed, causing their hearts to race. Everyone was to be treated equally. Everyone was to have fair access to resources. It was a beautiful prospect that had everyone affected bursting with excitement. The only angry one was Zhao Dongshan, as he realized that the assets that were his inheritance by right would soon be divided up equally among everyone else. Although he was furious to the point of going crazy, he didn't dare to go against the orders of the Grand Heaven Master. All of his hopes rested with his father, who had gone to the imperial palace with the other heavenly marquises. This isn't a proclamation of universal grace. It's proclamation of clan shakedowns. As he stood there gritting his teeth, he glared around angrily at the bastards and auxiliary bloodline cultivators. He was just starting to get restless from anger when Bai Xiaochun arrived. He hovered in the air above the clan, expression grim and eyes cold. With every moment that ticked by, his anxiety and madness grew stronger. All of the clan members down below who looked up at the black vortex of the corpse trooper's murderous aura were shocked. However, many of them had actually been waiting for Bai Xiaochun to show up, and were feeling more excited than ever. They felt very differently from the last time Bai Xiaochun had come. As for Zhao Dongshan, he looked up, expression flickering, and prepared to speak. Before he could, though, Bai Xiaochun's cold voice rang out to fill the entire Zhao clan. The Grand Heaven Master has spoken. He has issued the proclamation of universal grace, which all subjects of the dynasty are required to comply with, regardless of rank or status. I have come here in my role as the Inspections Commissioner, to represent the Grand Heaven Master in enforcing the proclamation. Numerous soft gasps could be heard in the clan, many of them filled with excitement. The bastard children and non-successors all looked on with brightly shining eyes. Zhao Dongshan's face fell even further, and his eyes widened. It was you. Damn it, it was you. This vicious plan was yours all along. That's why you were able to consolidate your power with the Grand Heaven Master. Zhao Dongshan understood everything in an instant. After all, it wasn't a very difficult puzzle to solve. The recent stir from the inspections manor happened right before the proclamation of universal grace was issued. The slightest amount of thought into the matter would reveal the underlying truth. Zhao Dongshan's madness, and his previous hatred, made it so that he couldn't hold back from shouting. Bai Hao, you'd, but he had picked the wrong time to react in such a way. The madness in Bai Xiaochun's own heart had reached the point that he could erupt with brutal violence at any moment. Bai Xiaochun said, a cold light flickering in his eyes. He took a step forward, vanishing and then reappearing right in front of Zhao Dongshan. Without the slightest hesitation, he then clenched his hand into a fist and punched out. The fist strike seemed to be filled with all the fury that existed in his heart. It caused the air to vibrate and shatter, and although the shocked Zhao Dongshan tried to defend himself, his battle prowess was vastly inferior to Bai Xiaochun's. Blood sprayed out of his mouth as he was flung backwards several hundred meters, where he slammed into a building that then collapsed on top of him. Although some of the other nearby clan members had instinctually stepped forward to interfere, most of them subsequently stopped in place. Then, they simply watched with glittering eyes as Bai Xiaochun took another step forward, placing him right in the middle of the collapsed building, directly in front of Zhao Dongshan, who had been struggling out of the rubble. Zhao Dongshan's eyes went wide with terror at the realization that Bai Xiaochun had come after him again, and he immediately tried to back up. But Bai Xiaochun was too fast. His hand exploded out with lightning speed to grab Zhao Dongshan by the throat and lift him up into the air. Then, he sent some cultivation-based power pouring into him to seal him. Was it you? Bai Xiaochun asked, his eyes as cold as midwinter snow as he stared at Zhao Dongshan. The way his gaze stabbed into Zhao Dongshan's eyes made it seem like he was capable of seeing all the secrets inside of him. Zhao Dongshan's heart immediately began to pound, and he started panting. Without even thinking about it, Zhao Dongshan tried to struggle free, but couldn't. The strength of Bai Xiaochun's right hand was completely terrifying. What are you talking about? Don't do anything rash. That was what he tried to say, but actually couldn't. The only thing which came out of his mouth were some indistinct gurgling sounds. By this point, a sense of imminent deadly crisis had risen up in his heart. He's crazy, he thought. Damn it, this Bai Hao is a madman. Zhao Dongshan's heart pounded in his chest as he realized that he was likely moments away from death. Bai Xiaochun looked at Zhao Dongshan for a moment, then slowly closed his eyes. Zhao Dongshan's expression had revealed nothing but fear of death. Considering how hot-headed he was, if he had been involved with the incident with Bai Hao, then the fact that he knew something about it would have shown in his eyes. So he's not in on it, he thought, his anxiety mounting. However, he didn't release Zhao Dongshan. Instead, he turned to look at the young clan members in the area, the ones who were obviously Zhao Dongshan's siblings. The proclamation of universal grace will be enforced, and I'm here to supervise. All of you should have fair and equal access to the resources of your clan. The people to benefit from the proclamation are those of you who never had any hope of becoming the successor of the clan, and those of you who were born bastards. If you refuse to support the proclamation, then the only people you will be hurting are yourselves. If you want the proper amount of resources, then I need you to tell me everything you know about your clan. Tell me about your parents, the members of the elder generation, the heavenly marquis. The extent of the wealth of your clan will determine how much resources you get. The more you tell me, the more information I'll have for my records. That's the only way to ensure that the resources are distributed evenly. And in the end, you will get the fairest division of the clan assets. I have the power to grant rewards during the carrying out of the proclamation of universal grace. Therefore, whoever among you gives me the most information will get the biggest rewards. As all of you can tell, this entire thing is for your benefit. That is why I need to know everything about the Zhao clan. And sometimes, the clan's assets are not physical items, but rather information, reports, and secrets. Such things are oftentimes far more valuable than the material assets. The other clan members were getting more excited by the moment, and their eyes were already shining with greed. They were bursting with excitement and ambition, to the point where some were on the verge of going crazy. From what Bai Xiaochun had just said, they could all tell that the proclamation of universal grace really had been issued to benefit them. If they wanted to get their share of the assets, then it was important to have a true understanding of what the clan possessed. And when it came to that, no one on the outside could possibly know as much as the people inside the clan itself. By this point, Zhao Dongshan's terror had reached the point of panic. On the one hand, he was terrified at the prospect of dying, but on the other hand, if people took the clan assets, they were basically taking away his inheritance. Although it was driving him into madness, his cultivation base had been tightly sealed, and he was being physically held by Bai Xiaochun. He had no choice but to wait and see what would happen, his heart filled with mixed emotions of all sorts. Bai Xiaochun could see how excited everyone was. Looking back at Zhao Dongshan for a moment, he then tossed him into another nearby building, which also collapsed on top of him. Then he flew into motion, taking his 5,000 corpse troopers with him as he went on to his next target, the next heavenly marquis clan. As he left, Zhao Dongshan crawled out of the rubble of the second building, staggering a bit as he looked around at all of the familiar faces around him. These were his siblings, who he had known for many years, but now, they looked like a pack of wolves. His heart trembled, and suddenly, the sky seemed dark. I'm finished. Bai Xiaochun took action at the perfect time, the very moment that the Grand Heaven Master's Dharmic decree was sent out, shaking Arch-Emperor City and causing all of the heavenly marquises to band together and go to the imperial palace. It was a time when the nobility and aristocracy were completely unstable, and because of that, Bai Xiaochun swept across them like a windstorm. The successors were struck with fear, and the bastards and direct bloodline non-successors were shown staunch support. For the latter, they now had a justification to be ambitious, as well as something they had never even been able to dream of before: hope. The truth was that Bai Xiaochun hadn't planned out his timing at all. He had simply been anxious, and hadn't dared to delay any longer than necessary. He would have shown up at the clans even if the heavenly marquises hadn't left. After all, he had 2 Diva Corps troopers, 4 half-devas, and 5,000 in the nascent soul stage. He could even assault the manors belonging to heavenly dukes, much less those of the heavenly marquises. It was with rapid speed that he began to move out from the Zhao clan into the other boroughs, toward the other heavenly marquis clans. There were roughly 90 of them, scattered throughout Archemperor City. Virtually every borough in the city had one, and as soon as Bai Xiaochun arrived, he would immediately take action and grab the appointed successor of the clan. And he would ask the same question of each one. Was it you? He accompanied the words with raging killing intent, casting fear into the hearts of the clan successors he grabbed. However, he didn't turn up any clues, which caused his anxiety to grow, and his voice to grow more filled with rage. At every clan, he would address bastards and direct bloodline non-successors alike, repeating the words he had first spoken in the Zhao clan. The only difference was that he began to speak more and more directly. Tell me everything about your clan. Tell me what assets your clan has. Tell me about your clan's reserve savings. And tell me about your clan's troop movements. Did anyone new show up recently? Was there any suspicious activity among the elder generation? What has your heavenly marquis been up to? Tell me your clan's secrets, your hidden resources, your intelligence reports. The more you tell me, the greater your share will be. Whoever tells me the most will receive personal backing from me. He spoke such words in clan after clan. Of course, no matter how quickly he moved, making his way through all 90 of the clans was not something he could accomplish in a short time. Eventually, he split up his force of 5,000 corpse troopers, sending them to other clans with explicit instructions on what to do and say. Before long, news of what was happening filtered up to the heavenly marquises, who were waiting outside of Heavenmaster Hall to see the Grand Heavenmaster. They were infuriated but had no idea what exactly to do. Some stamped their feet and returned to their clans to try to restore order, others remained behind in the hopes of getting an audience with the Grand Heavenmaster. It didn't take long before the ambitions in the hearts of the bastards and non-successors began to grow like weeds in a field. The waiting heavenly marquises began to grow more and more anxious, and were constantly sending and receiving messages to stay up to date on what was happening in their own clans. The fact that their children were all starting to go completely mad had their hearts pounding with anxiety. This good-for-nothing Bai Hao, he was the one that came up with this vicious plan. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Expressions of madness appeared on their faces as they realized that things had already reached the point of no return. The storm had come, and calming it would be no easy task. Once ambitions arose in the heart, they could not be erased easily. Although it wouldn't be completely impossible, for all intents and purposes, it was. None of them had actually met with the Grand Heavenmaster, and yet thanks to Bai Xiaochun, their clans were all descending into chaos. It was already worse than an enemy invasion. Some clans had it better off. But for those who were truly in pandemonium, their respective heavenly marquises eventually had no choice but to head back to put out the proverbial fires. By the time the doors of Heavenmaster Hall opened, there were only about 20 heavenly marquises left behind, who then entered the hall with bitterness written on their faces. It was impossible to say what exactly they talked about, or how the Grand Heavenmaster managed to placate them. But in the end, they all left, unsightly expressions on their faces as they chose to simply hold their tongues on the matter. By that time it was night, and Bai Xiaochun was waiting anxiously in the inspection's manor. At a certain point, his transmission jade slip vibrated, and messages began to filter in from some of his most important contacts out in the clans. After the heavenly marquises had returned, they quelled much of the chaos, and cast fear into the hearts of all their children. Because of that, Bai Xiaochun wasn't getting a huge amount of news. However, he wasn't willing to resign himself to fate. Virtually every day, he would take his army of corpse troopers out to visit the clans, and reinforce the ambitions which had taken root in the hearts of the people there. Although he experienced some friction with various heavenly marquises, considering he had 5,000 corpse troopers at his command, he didn't have much trouble dealing with it. Furthermore, he had Zhou Yixing go out and spread more information to boost the confidence of the bastard children. Things went on like this for 3 days. The proclamation of universal grace still stood, and the Grand Heavenmaster didn't seem likely to rescind it. Despite the threats of the heavenly marquises, Bai Xiaochun's transmission jade slip continued to vibrate as more information and secrets came in. Another 3 days passed, and the heavenly marquises continued to quell the chaos in their clans using all sorts of methods. Some used callous techniques, others were more conciliatory. Whatever they did, it was exhausting. After all, they not only had to prepare for what happened if Bai Xiaochun showed up, but they also had to work hard to control internal affairs. Everyone involved had the blood of the clan in them, which meant that no outsider could be relied upon for help. The marquises had to handle everything personally. Some of them even resorted to executions. Because of that, more and more people began to act in secret. As a result, Bai Xiaochun's transmission jade slip vibrated with increasing frequency. Soon, when word spread that some of the heavenly marquises had brutally killed or imprisoned some of their own children, Bai Xiaochun took his corpse trooper army over and fought them openly as punishment. The fighting got other heavenly marquises worked up, and they joined in the fighting. However, the bastard sons of the clans, who had been suppressed viciously for more than 10 days straight, and who had also been incited into action by Zhou Yixing, finally made a move. At this point, true chaos erupted in many clans. Things had reached a boiling point, and all of Arch-Emperor City was being shaken. Eventually, the Grand Heaven Master took action to stop the fighting. The heavenly marquises couldn't worry about Bai Xiaochun anymore, and returned to their clans to prevent more chaos from erupting. Of course, things had only calmed down on the surface. The clans were buzzing with activity. And at the same time, Bai Xiaochun's transmission jade slip began to vibrate almost non-stop. There were more than 10,000 bastards and other direct bloodline non-successors who were sending him messages. My clan has 3,700,000,000 portions of soul medicine. Exalted Bai Hao, my clan has a secret treasure room. Normally, only the successor is allowed in. I once saw our heavenly marquis with a diva soul. It was metal type. My clan has a 100,000-man strong personal army. Although the bastards and other direct bloodline non-successors all seemed shaken, they were secretly going crazy, and were beginning to reveal all of their clan secrets to Bai Xiaochun. By now, Bai Xiaochun basically had spies in all of the clans. And before long, he not only knew everything that was happening in the clans, but could also directly influence the course of events. Many of the bastard children and direct bloodline non-successors had hated Bai Xiaochun in the past. But now, he stood on their side, and even represented them. As the person enforcing the proclamation of universal grace, they were all on the same team. It wasn't that none of the heavenly marquises had thought of defying the order. However, as time progressed, the truly vicious aspects of the proclamation of universal grace only became clearer. Each clan had one successor. However, the heavenly marquises were all people with profound cultivation bases, as well as multiple wives and concubines. It was only natural that they would have many children. Furthermore, all of those children were members of their clans. And now, all of the bastards and direct bloodline non-successors were on the side of the Grand Heaven Master. Unless the heavenly marquises completely exterminated their own bloodlines, the unrest inside their clans would never be completely quelled, and there was no way they could defy orders in rebellion. Furthermore, in the final analysis, the proclamation of universal grace kept all clan resources within the clan itself, and also within the bloodlines of the various heavenly marquises. As such, the Grand Heaven Master could only be said to be acting reasonably. Justice and reason were on his side, and thus, everyone supported him. Thus, the truly ferocious nature of the entire plan was revealed. And what was even more terrifying, were the common citizens of Arch-Emperor City. The nobility and aristocracy were vastly removed from the common people. Therefore, when the proclamation of universal grace was announced, the common people staunchly supported it. Although it wouldn't directly benefit them, they were generally envious of the nobility and aristocracy, and especially the successors. Therefore, they were very happy to see everyone within the nobility and aristocracy treated the same. It would immediately cause very powerful people to fall, and although they would likely rise to prominence again, the disparity between them and the common people would be greatly reduced. As such, the common citizens in Arch-Emperor Dynasty were all very excited about what was happening. Furthermore, they supported the Grand Heaven Master more than ever. Yet again, the Grand Heaven Master's prestige rose to a higher level, a level that was completely and utterly unprecedented. In fact, he was now in the position to smoothly establish his own new dynasty if he wished to. That filled the heavenly marquises with dread and bitterness. The heavenly marquises were all profound schemers, and therefore, it didn't take long for them to realize how truly terrifying the proclamation of universal grace was. And yet, that realization did them no good. Knowing the facts and being able to do something about them were two very different things. If Bai Hao really did come up with this idea, then he's completely terrifying. His ability to craft and scheme could terrify even ghosts and gods. He's a complete master at manipulating people. What kind of person do you have to be to come up with a vicious plan like this? Wait a second. This Bai Hao was born a bastard. Damn it, I bet he came up with this idea all the way back in Giant Ghost City, in the Bai clan. And yet, the storm was only just beginning. Things had started in Arch-Emperor City, but they soon spread to other parts of the wildlands. It wasn't just the heavenly marquis clans who were affected. Many necromancer clans erupted into pandemonium. And the person responsible for all of it was Bai Xiaochun, who currently sat cross-legged in the inspection's manner. He did nothing to cover the exhaustion in his eyes. Up to this point, he still hadn't rested. Instead, he read each and every message that came his way, analyzing it and hoping to piece together any clues he found. About half a month had passed since Bai Hao had gone missing, and Bai Xiaochun's madness had become like a raging sea of fire that threatened to burn both the people around him and himself. He simply couldn't stop worrying about Bai Hao and his safety. Unfortunately, none of the information he had received up to this point had been of any help. He was deeply worried and sick at heart, to a level he had never experienced before. The only time he could keep his breathing straight and his aura steady was when he was immersed in looking for clues. Although he had plenty of information stored in his jade slip now, none of it was comprehensive. He knew that any hope of finding Bai Hao rested in getting more clues. The wildfire caused by the proclamation of universal grace needs to burn a bit hotter. With that, he looked up, focusing his gaze on a certain direction. Arch-Emperor City's Burrow 5. Burrow 5 was the location of a Heavenly Duke clan. The time has come to make a move against the Heavenly Dukes. Not only will I be able to get more good information, I can also instill a bit of confidence in the cowards there. Gritting his teeth, he flew into the air, and was soon leading his corpse troopers toward Burrow 5. Many people were paying attention, and noticed what was happening. Countless eyes tracked the army of corpse troopers as it flew through the sky, and before long, people realized that he was heading to Burrow 5, which was the location of a Heavenly Duke clan. At that point, people began to gasp in excitement. A Heavenly Duke clan. This Bai Hao is too gutsy. He's actually going to a Heavenly Duke clan to enforce the proclamation of universal grace. As the conversation buzzed, 5,000 corpse troopers descended on Burrow 5, with Bai Xiaochun in the lead position. He was flanked by 2 corpse troopers who emanated diva fluctuations, one in silver armor and one in black. Next in the procession were 9 half-diva corpse troopers in black armor. They didn't even pause for a moment after entering Burrow 5. They headed right for the Heavenly Duke clan. Bai Xiaochun vaguely recalled this Heavenly Duke as being an old man with whom he had had a few relatively cordial dealings. Unfortunately, he was running out of options at this point. As he neared the clan, a glowing shield of light suddenly appeared to block his path. A face appeared on the surface of the shield, a middle-aged man who looked at Bai Xiaochun with cold eyes. "Inspections Commissioner, if you have something to say, go ahead and say it. However, you are not permitted past this point." Bai Xiaochun's eyes narrowed as he looked through the shield at the clan, where numerous clan members were staring up at him. Although they all looked calm, he could see glints in the eyes of some that revealed to him that even many people in this Heavenly Duke clan were looking forward to the effects of the proclamation of universal grace. Unfortunately, they could not act out in any way because of the unbelievable power of the Heavenly Duke himself. After a moment of thought, Bai Xiaochun chose not to try to use force. He simply hovered there and projected his voice with his cultivation base so that it passed through the shield. "I'm here on the orders of the Grand Heaven Master, to supervise the enforcement of the proclamation of universal grace. Heavenly Marquis clans and Heavenly Duke clans alike must comply. Even the 4 Heavenly Kings are not exempt. Clan resources must be split fairly within the clan. Whether you are bastards or direct bloodline members with no right of inheritance, all of you." With that, he proceeded on with his usual speech. When he was finished, the expressionless middle-aged man looked at him and said, "Finished? Please see yourself out." With that, the face of the man faded away, and Bai Xiaochun was left hovering there, a slight frown on his face. After a moment passed, he turned and headed to the 2nd Heavenly Duke clan. After that was the 3rd, and the 4th. Before long, he had visited every clan between Burrow 1 and Burrow 5. He had visited 9 Heavenly Duke clans, and they had all treated him the same way as the first one he had visited. Not a single Heavenly Duke allowed him to enter their clan. They permitted him to speak outside of their spell formation shield, and then unceremoniously asked him to leave. It was cooperation of a sort, but their attitude left Bai Xiaochun with a very unsightly expression on his face. As for everyone who had gathered to follow him and watch the show, various thoughts ran through their heads. Furthermore, the children in the various clans were also watching, and it caused their hearts to sink. Don't tell me that the proclamation of universal grace isn't going to last much longer. All of them were wondering about the potential profits and losses at hand. The nobility and aristocracy watched as Bai Xiaochun grimly arrived at the location of the final Heavenly Duke clan, the Chen clan. Chen Haosong's clan took up nearly half of the entire burrow, and had a Heavenly Duke pagoda that rose up far higher than any of the Heavenly Marquis pagodas. Everyone in the clan sat silently waiting. As for all the children of the clan, the events which had played out among the heavenly marquis clans because of the proclamation of universal grace had been very exciting to them. And yet, none of them had dared to act. After all, the difference between a heavenly marquis clan and a heavenly duke clan was difficult to even put into words. Back in the initial bloodbath, the Grand Heaven Master had put an end to 18 heavenly marquises. However, not a single heavenly duke had been affected. Generally speaking, as long as the heavenly dukes didn't openly betray the dynasty, their positions were unshakable. They were devas, and whether it was in the wild lands or the Heavenspan River region, such people existed on a higher level than everyone else. As Bai Xiaochun arrived at the Chen clan, the glowing shield sprang up, preventing him from entering. Then, a voice echoed out loud and clear. "Speak, and when you're done, get the hell out of here." The scorn and loathing in that voice couldn't have been more clear. Bai Xiaochun's eyes narrowed as he looked through the shield at the Heavenly Duke Pagoda, and then suddenly, he smiled. It was a cold smile, a smile filled with unrestrainable madness. The audience that had built up looked on silently. The fact that the 10 heavenly dukes wouldn't even let Bai Xiaochun in was something that led to all sorts of varied thoughts on their part. News had been spreading, and more people in Arch-Emperor City were paying attention to what was happening. Within the shield, the numerous members of the Chen clan had placid expressions on their faces as they looked through the shield at Bai Xiaochun. Chen Shang was there. He was a member of the direct bloodline, but had no hope of becoming the successor. In the past, he had hated Bai Xiaochun, but now his feelings had changed. He knew the type of reserve savings his clan had built up, and also knew that if they were fairly distributed to someone like him, that a single portion would be enough to cause countless people to drool in envy, and would essentially support him for the rest of his life. 1. As various similar thoughts ran through the heads of many other clan members, Bai Xiaochun smiled coldly on the other side of the shield, and his eyes burned with madness. He had known from the very beginning that the Heavenly Duke clans would be much more difficult to handle than the Heavenly Marquis clans. Therefore, he had already made up his mind to throw caution to the wind, and leave the Chen clan for the very last. After all, he had butted heads with this clan before. His plan all along had been to see what happened with the other clans, and if things didn't go well, to go crazy on the Chen clan. And now, he didn't even need to find an excuse. The Chen clan's attitude was enough to set him off. Pointing dramatically at the clan, he said, "Corpse Trooper Army, break down that spell formation shield." Countless jaws dropped when people heard his words. Whether it was the people in the Chen clan or the audience who had gathered, no one even had a chance to react before Bai Xiaochun's 5,000 corpse troopers howled at the tops of their lungs and charged forward in attack. The silver-armored corpse trooper moved especially quickly, and was the first to slam into the shield. Even as the shield shook, the 9 half-diva corpse troopers arrived, unleashing heaven-shaking, earth-shattering power. Things weren't over yet, though. Next came the rest of the 5,000 troops, who unleashed a torrent of magical techniques and divine abilities. This was like warfare, as 5,000 attacks became like a huge wave that slammed into the Chen clan's spell formation shield. "What are you doing, Bai Hao?" shouted the same voice as before, except this time there was no scorn in it, only fury. As for all of the Chen clan cultivators inside, their faces fell. The audience looked on with incredulity. This Bai Hao, heavens. He's actually ordering an attack on a Heavenly Duke clan. I can't believe he dares to do such a thing. The onlookers were starting to get very enthused, and quickly began to spread word through the city. Everyone else who had been watching events play out from other locations in Arch-Emperor City had strange expressions on their faces. Many of the heavenly marquises flew out from their pagodas and looked over at the Chen clan with expressions of complete disbelief. The other 9 heavenly dukes were all shocked, and sent streams of divine sense over to observe what was happening directly. When they realized that no reaction at all could be seen from the imperial palace, they grew more taciturn than ever. The bastard children in the clan were all as shocked as wooden chickens, and a single thought ran through all of their heads. He's insane. Even if the Chen clan's spell formation shield was stronger than it was, it couldn't withstand a sea of divine abilities like this. Under the battery, it quickly began to fragment, and then eventually just exploded. Chaos immediately swept through the Chen clan, and a roar of rage echoed out from the Heavenly Duke Pagoda. "Do you have a death wish, Bai Hao?" Powerful fluctuations surged out from the Heavenly Duke Pagoda, rushing forward to meet the sea of magical techniques and divine abilities that were entering the clan. A huge boom resulted that was distinctly audible even in the Imperial Palace. The sea of invading attacks shattered, and the 5,000 corpse troopers were shoved backward, with the exception of the silver-armored corpse trooper and the 9 half-devas. All of them shot toward the Heavenly Duke Pagoda. Before they could arrive, the air around the pagoda swirled dramatically as a projected version of Chen Haosong's face appeared. Looking at the silver-armored corpse trooper and the other corpse troopers it led, he uttered a curse in a shouting voice. Cleaving, suddenly, numerous mountains formed out of thin air, descending from above to slam into the corpse troopers. Moments later, Chen Haosong's face twisted and distorted, and then a violet beam of light shot out, slashing through everything in its path as it headed directly toward Bai Xiaochun. Chen Haosong was actually trying to kill Bai Xiaochun. However, at this point, diva fluctuations rolled out from the black-armored corpse trooper who had stayed behind to defend Bai Xiaochun. Without the slightest hesitation, that corpse trooper took a step forward and launched a fist strike at the beam of violet light. The light shattered, and the corpse trooper shuddered as he staggered backward several paces. At the same time, his entire right arm was shredded out of existence. If he had possessed a flesh and blood body, then it would have been a very serious injury. However, corpse troopers were essentially impossible to permanently injure. A moment later, the area where the arm had been severed began to wriggle and grow, as a new arm appeared. Having failed to destroy Bai Xiaochun, Chen Haosong stepped out of the Heavenly Duke Pagoda, where he waved his sleeve, sending a blast of wind at the silver-armored corpse trooper, and the other 9 who followed him. The 9 half-diva corpse troopers trembled and tumbled backward, but the one in the silver armor only took a single step back. That caused Chen Haosong's face to fall, and he even began to pant slightly. The diva fluctuations rolling off of Chen Haosong grew even stronger. Never before could he have guessed that this Bai Hao would actually dare to attack him and his clan. Although there had been friction between them in the past, he had always been of the opinion that Bai Xiaochun only looked like a force to be reckoned with, but was actually cowardly at heart, and mostly put on a show of false bravado. He had also come to the conclusion that although he could act in ruthless fashion, he valued his own life too much to do anything risky. Therefore, Bai Xiaochun's sudden decisive action left him feeling very shocked. "Do you know what you're doing, Bai Hao?" he said coldly. Bai Xiaochun looked back at him, waving his hand to cause all of the corpse troopers to stop moving. And yet, his killing intent only grew more and more intense. Chen Haosong's eyes slowly narrowed. Although his cultivation base surpassed the silver-armored corpse troopers by quite a bit, he knew that he was surrounded by a huge group of them, and that they all had undying bodies, as well as further unknown abilities. And that was not to mention Bai Xiaochun's quasi-diva realm corpse trooper. All in all, it was a shocking force arrayed against him. Bai Xiaochun's expression was as cold as ice as he looked at Chen Haosong. Then he took a step forward, and another, until he passed the point which had once been defended by the shield, and was now inside of the Chen clan. According to the proclamation of universal grace, everyone must be treated equally. The bastard children of the Chen clan, as well as the direct bloodline members with no right of succession, are all welcome to send me what information they know. I will guarantee that they get their fair share of the clan assets. It is only fair and just. If you are cowardly, and don't take advantage of this opportunity, if you allow the distribution to be unfair, and allow the so-called successor to get the majority of the assets, then the results will be obvious. What little you gain, will also be taken away from you. At the moment, none of you have to actually do anything. Just, tell me everything you know about your clan. What secrets are there? What resources exist? Has anyone new shown up recently? All you have to do is secretly pass word to me about these matters. I'll do all the dirty work. Although Bai Xiaochun spoke calmly, it was also with great power, allowing everyone in the Chen clan to hear him. Immediately, the hearts of many clan members began to race. An unsightly expression could be seen on Chen Haosong's face as he hovered there in the air. However, when he looked up at the imperial palace and saw absolutely no reaction, he realized that no one would be interfering with the day's events. After Bai Xiaochun finished speaking, he gave a piercing look to the assembled crowds, then turned to leave. However, after only taking a few steps, he looked back at the Chen clan, his eyes shining with cold light. Oh right, just now, who was it that so brazenly defied the proclamation of universal grace of the Grand Heaven Master, and even told me to get the hell out of here? Almost immediately numerous bastard children within the clan all looked over at one particular old man. Even Chen Shang joined in that group. The old man's face fell, and before he could even say anything in response, Bai Xiaochun waved his hand. Execute him. As soon as the words left his mouth, all 5,000 corpse troopers attacked simultaneously. A scream echoed out as the old man was killed in body and soul. Chen Haosong's face grew so grim it was almost as black as iron. Clearly, Bai Xiaochun was ready to fly off the handle at the slightest provocation. Considering how delicate the situation was, Chen Haosong had no choice but to simply bite his tongue and stare with narrowed eyes at Bai Xiaochun as he walked off. 1. Chen Shang was one of the first chosen to clash with Bai Xiaochun in Arch-Emperor City, back in the arc that started in chapter 725. Bai Xiaochun didn't need to do this to every single one of the Heavenly Duke clans. All he needed to do was show his general stance. The children of the other 9 Heavenly Dukes would immediately begin to ponder the significance of what had happened, not to mention the children in the Heavenly Marquis clans. What he had done was enough. In fact, the very day he left the Chen clan, he got more messages than he had during the past half-month. Some information was genuine and some was not. When reports came in about the assets of the various clans, Bai Xiaochun merely glanced at them. What he was more interested in was information about what unusual events had transpired in the clans recently. During the following days, information poured in, and Bai Xiaochun immersed himself in it, searching for clues. Many things were happening behind the scenes in the Heavenly Duke clans because of the proclamation of universal grace. The storm was building up to the point that the Heavenly Marquis clans were starting to lose their grip of control. It was also at this point that, at long last, the 4 Heavenly Kings were affected. The War Champion King got off somewhat lightly because he had fewer children. Other than the Junior Champion King, he only had 5, and was able to keep them under control without resorting to any violent methods. The Giant Ghost King came off almost completely unscathed. His only daughter, Mistress Red Dust, didn't even know what was going on. She had not yet ended the session of secluded meditation her father had encouraged her to begin after the ancestral sacrifices. However, the 9 Serenities King had it very rough. He had over 100 children, all of whom were thrilled about the situation and instantly sided with the Grand Heaven Master and Bai Xiaochun. Zhou Hong wanted to cry. After all, if he wanted to eventually take over the position of king, then he needed a demigod cultivation base. And his only hope of doing that was by using all the resources the clan had built up. But now, his hopes were dashed. And of course, he came to detest Bai Xiaochun more bitterly than ever. The 9 Serenities King was a bit worried about the matter. Considering he had a demigod cultivation base, he initially didn't pay much attention to it, but the squabbling and fighting among his children quickly became quite a headache to deal with. However, all he had to do was think about the Wildlands' famous Spirit Advent King, and suddenly, he realized that his concerns were of little note. The Spirit Advent King was the one going most crazy of all. Currently, he was shouting so loud that his voice echoed out from Spirit Advent Hall to fill the entire city. Damn that Bai Hao. That little punk is too ruthless. All I did was break up him and Shanshan, right? Ag, I didn't do anything that bad. What, I'm not even allowed to watch over my own daughter. This revenge of his is obviously targeting me. He was so angry he was shaking, and the mere thought of how many children he had caused him to howl with grief. He just had too many offspring. Considering sons alone, he had over 3,000. And if you added in the daughters, well, it was roughly double that. In fact, even he wasn't sure exactly how many children he had. The thought of his life savings being divided up among roughly 6,000 children was so infuriating and distressing that not even his demigod cultivation base could keep him calm. And of course, his countless children were very excited by the proclamation of universal grace. And the fact that they were all siding with the Grand Heaven Master and Bai Xiaochun was monumental. After all, if the Spirit Advent King resisted the proclamation, it was entirely possible that all his children could join forces and actually fight him. Spirit Advent City was already in complete chaos, with 6,000 of the king's own children pooling all of their resources and power structure together. The Spirit Advent King had no options at hand. He couldn't kill all of his children to save his own clan assets. And therefore, he simply stared morosely in the direction of Arch-Emperor City. That Bai Hao is definitely doing this on purpose. Most furious of all was the official heir apparent in Spirit Advent City, who sat with gritted teeth and bloodshot eyes, his hatred for Bai Xiaochun rising into the heavens. Xu Shan lay on her bed gazing in the direction of Arch-Emperor City, sighing constantly. As far as she was concerned, there was something fishy going on with Bai Hao. She really wanted to go find him and talk about it, but her father had her on complete lockdown, making it impossible for her to leave the city. As far as Chen Manyao was concerned, she was still in secluded meditation on the orders of the Grand Heaven Master. As the 4 Heavenly Kings dealt with the situation in various ways, Bai Xiaochun was sifting through volumes of information, trying to find that needle in a haystack that was the clue he needed. Miao Liner went missing. Her clan used to have an earthly necromancer. Her entire clan is missing. All of a sudden, his killing intent surged, but he quickly suppressed it. Now was not the time to act impulsively. He could only take action when he was absolutely sure of the facts. That was his only hope of saving Bai Hao. After all, if he made his move, and then failed, then his enemies would be even more on alert, and it would be almost impossible to track them down. I'm only going to have one chance. I just don't have enough clues. However, I definitely need to figure out where the Miao clan went. With those thoughts on his mind, he sent a message to Zhou Yixing and had him start searching for Miao clan cultivators, with orders to keep eyes on those he found, but not make any sort of contact. The only people I haven't touched now are the 4 heavenly kings. Who exactly was it that did the deed that day? Once I find that out, then I can use all of the information I've collected to figure out where Bai Hao is. Although he was clearly exhausted, his heart still burned with intense madness. He hadn't rested at all for nearly a month, and his nerves were stretched taut. However, he continued working, using the resources of the inspections manor to reach out to the children of the heavenly kings. His instructions were for them to personally come to the inspections manor within 3 days so that he could deliver the proclamation of universal grace to them personally. Of course, Bai Xiaochun knew that, considering this wasn't an order from the Grand Heaven Master, the heirs apparent could simply ignore it. However, he didn't care about that, or how much they hated him. He wanted to see how many of the children who had no right of inheritance would come. Those people would be his eyes and ears within the palaces of the heavenly kings. The giant ghost king ignored the message, as did the war champion king and his children. But the children of the 9 Serenities king and the Spirit Advent king rushed excitedly toward the teleportation portals in their city to meet with Bai Xiaochun at the inspections manor. When the day came, Bai Xiaochun emerged from his private chamber to find a shocking number of people waiting for him. Furthermore, the fact that 97% of them were from Spirit Advent City left him feeling stunned. As soon as all these royal children caught sight of him, they clasped hands passionately and bowed. Greetings, Inspections Commissioner. You are a true hero of the ages, Inspections Commissioner. The proclamation of universal grace is a sign of the coming golden age of the Arch-Emperor dynasty. All sorts of talk could be heard from the mouths of the thousands of people present. In response, Bai Xiaochun gave a slight nod. He was in no mood for chit-chat. Looking out at the crowd, he somberly said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Arch-Emperor himself has ordered that from this day forward, everyone from the Grand Heaven Master to the royal officials will no longer have solitary heirs apparent. Everyone will now have the chance to win the position of king, even if you don't have a demigod cultivation base. According to the stipulations of the Proclamation of Universal Grace, all of you now have the right to start out on equal footing to become the appointed heir apparent. However, the true judge of how fair this will all be is your own understanding of your clans. Tell me everything you know about them. The more information I get, the more likely that I can make you all happy. As of this moment, I have sufficient information from the Heavenly Marquis clans and the Heavenly Duke clans, as provided to me by the bastard children and those from the direct bloodlines who have no official right of inheritance. The only people I need information from now, is you here." Everyone present was already roughly familiar with what had been happening, and took his words in stride. In fact, all of them felt very grateful. It was only natural for them to support an arrangement in which they could secretly pass the information to him, and he would do the dirty work. When it came to information about clan assets, such things wouldn't normally be passed to outsiders. But he'd already done this same thing with the Heavenly Duke clans, and no one had come to be in any danger. And when it came to the demigod clans, no one would punish these children, not even if they were considered to have betrayed the clan by revealing secret information. After all, they had the blood of heavenly kings in them, even if they weren't heirs apparent. Normally speaking, they could do whatever they wished without fear of any reprisal. As such, the very day that everyone left the inspections manor, news began to filter into Bai Xiaochun. As of this point, Bai Xiaochun now had an information network that filled the entire Arch-Emperor dynasty. Reports came in almost every moment. Even the common people joined in, sending him information about virtually everything. Bai Xiaochun couldn't have been busier. Eventually, after 5 days passed, he suddenly looked up, and his hand clenched down so hard on the transmission jade slip that it nearly shattered. At this point, the killing intent in his eyes burned with complete insanity. He had found the clue he needed to fit all the pieces together. The impenetrable fog that had surrounded the disappearance of Bai Hao faded away. Their clan used to have an earthly necromancer. 13 clans working together. The 9 Serenities king, Miao Linner's grandfather. He's hiding in one of those 13 clans. Killing intent surging, he looked down at the transmission jade slip and found a message from one of the children of Heavenly Marquis Zhou. There's a celestial necromancer in our clan that I've never seen before. He's very mysterious. Supposedly he's in secluded meditation performing spirit enhancements on some magical items, but I doubt that's true. Bai Xiaochun looked up again, and his eye were crimson. This is what I needed. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.